morning. My name is Kelly McCormick, and I'm the Director of Events and Programming at the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to IT Basics for Business, a breakfast seminar series that provides a forum to gain useful, do-it-yourself IT solutions and insightful, actionable tips. I'd like to begin by thanking Uprise partners for continuing their support, which allows us to bring you this virtual event series. Like all Chamber virtual signature events, today's presentation is free, and it will be recorded and made available for free replay on the Chamber's website and YouTube page. To keep up to date on all the Chamber's news and events, please visit our website, portlandregion.com, check out our events page, sign up for our weekly email newsletter, and follow us on social media. Before we begin today's program, I'd like to remind everyone that we're using a platform called StreamYard this morning. This platform provides improved production and interactive elements that enhance virtual events. When you have questions for our presenter today, you can type them in the YouTube chat. We'll have a formal Q&A session at the end of the presentation, but please do feel free to enter questions at any time. Today's topic, Business Resiliency, What Leading an IT Company Has Taught Me, will be presented by Melinda Gagnon, CEO of Uprise Partners. Melinda has more than 20 years of experience in business strategy and technology. She has served as a strategist at Google and senior partner at WPP, where she founded and led their consulting organization and the product management and technology group. She specializes in business resiliency planning, communications technologies, product management, and technology operations. She has advised clients such as Procter & Gamble, General Electric, Volkswagen, and Walmart, as well as hundreds of startups. Melinda has served on the board of the Maine Venture Fund and the Mitchell Institute, and is a mentor with Techstars, Mass Challenge, and the Maine Center for Entrepreneurs. She is an avid skier and scuba diver and a certified yoga teacher. I'm excited to welcome to the stage Melinda Gagnon, CEO of Uprise Partners.
Good morning, Kelly. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I first just want to start with a brief introduction of Uprise before I dive into all things business resilience that I've learned over the years. Uprise Partners is a technology services company. So what we specialize in is helping small, medium-sized businesses operate and thrive through using technology in the best way. We focus on full service IT and cybersecurity. So the best way to think about what we offer, we are the IT department. So everything from the day-to-day service desk operating around the clock, through monitoring all of your systems, cybersecurity, and also to board level virtual chief information officer advisory. So we really aim to be that holistic technology partner that will help you manage the day-to-day and also really be that partner you can go to as you navigate what's next for your business. So we want to grow and evolve with you as your businesses change over time. Something that we're proud to share are some of the accolades that we've received in the industry for the last 6 years in particular. We've been noted as one of the top managed services providers in North America, also one of the top security providers. And we've had numerous awards, as you can see, from our mid-market solution, Nod to the Tech Elite service, Fast Growth 150 list. And last year, we were recognized as Business of the Year from the Portland group Propel. So honored to be recognized. We have a wonderful team that works with customers here in Maine, as well as all over the country and now the globe. And we continue to grow fast. And as we always say as a team, we want to keep raising the bar on ourselves. So we want to keep doing better and better so we can continue to stay ahead of the curve. Technology always changes fast and our customers' needs always change. So we're always looking to see what's next, do better, and we're excited to keep being a great partner to all of our customers. So with that, I would love to dive into today's topic. So as you can imagine, with leading Uprise for the past 9 years now, we founded the company in 2017, have seen a lot of lessons learned through our own experience with Uprise and also through all of our customers. So thought it would be helpful to have some time to reflect on some of the top patterns that I've seen and lessons learned around how technology really helps us to build truly resilient organizations. So one of the big things that I think we can all identify with is we're all in some way part of a technology company or operating a technology company. No longer can a business operate in an analog fashion, right? Those days are long gone. And particularly in the past 10 years and more critically, the past 5 years, the technology landscape has changed so much that every business, no matter what sector you're in, will notice such a big change in how effective you can be when you start using the right technology and tools. And this isn't just a tech and tools story, right? Whenever I talk about technology, it's really about, yes, the tech itself, choosing the right tool, setting it up in the right way. But that will always fall flat unless that is also combined with the right and use it in the best way. When we're having this discussion today about technology, that's the holistic lens that I want us to look at that together. So yes, it's the tech, it's the process, it's the policy combined with people, right? How do people use it in day-to-day circumstances with their work to help them work smarter and produce better outcomes? So when we think of technology in that way, it starts to up-level what it actually can do for us. So IT decisions are something that directly impact how competitive we can be, how secure we are, and how scalable we can be. And this comes from two different angles. So it helps us with our defensive posture, right? From that security standpoint, how do we protect what we've built and what we have? And then also it has that, often posture of how do we stay ahead of the curve, right? What's happening in our industry? Our customer needs may be changing, maybe the competitive landscape has been changing, and then it helps us to drive efficiencies, right? So ultimately, the way that we think about technology and IT in particular fundamentally changed. Many organizations haven't quite adjusted to how that is now impacting their organization. So we'll talk more about those specific things that businesses should be thinking about. So gaps we're seeing today in relation to this topic are really around relegating a technology partner or IT into a reactive space. So again, that more defensive posture, but not even completely addressing that. It's more of a reactive stance. So IT only matters when something breaks. It is important that you have someone to call when something breaks. Absolutely, that's critical. So this reactive function is important and needs to be there, but it's only part of the solution. Another challenge is there's often in small, medium-sized businesses a lack of technical leadership. Because if you're not a tech company, right? Let's say you're a manufacturing company You have different type of tech leadership, but maybe not IT, law firm or an accounting firm, right? So as you build your organization, it oftentimes doesn't make sense to invest into a tech leader, a chief information officer or a chief technology officer. So often these gaps are overlooked just by virtue of who's in the room. And when I say that, I don't fault any of these companies for being in that position, because it makes sense that those folks aren't there. And we all just, we know what we know, right, from the experience that we have. And so this isn't, something that, means that you have a leadership team that isn't equipped. It's simply a matter of, well, you don't know what you don't know, right? And that's why you do need those partners in your corner who can say, hey, have you thought of adding, for example, a regular backup and recovery test every quarter to make sure that if something happens, the business isn't going to be paralyzed, right? Maybe that's something that you hadn't thought of before. So this technical leadership is really where we often see a gap. And then that dovetails with overconfidence in current setup, right? And I think there's kind of a mentality, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. When it becomes a problem, that's when, refer back to point number one, that's where the reactive IT comes into play. So, having complacency is something that we really have to keep a heads up on, and ask those questions of, is some of my equipment out of date? Is just some of my, for example, laptops no longer able to receive updated patches, right? I mean, that's something that's very tactical, but could be a big problem. And then the final thing here, underestimating risk. So I think you're kind of seeing the overall trend here when, we're reactive, we don't have that kind of overall strategic look at IT, we get complacent, we're underestimating the risk that could be kind of sitting there waiting. So we'll talk more this morning around trends in cyber threats and how we can prevent those. But that is a real concern for small, medium-sized businesses as well as large businesses. At this point, bad actors don't discriminate. Small, medium-sized businesses are absolutely a prime target, and I'll talk a little bit more about what we're seeing there. So essentially, there is a big shift happening. So, the IT of old, IT means support, it means reactivity, and the risk used to be framed in terms of inconvenience because of downtime. So isn't that annoying that so-and-so can't log in? Or isn't that annoying that, this morning the internet's down for a little while, right? But it's a blip, and then on we go. The shift now, because technology is so critical and interwoven into every part of our business operation, it's now essentially part of our business infrastructure. So what that then causes IT to function as is that key component or that backbone of your organization. So if things go down, that downtime is no longer the blip, right? The downtime is now a serious operational risk. Downtime is costly. If that continues for too long, that can have financial impact and reputational impact to a business that can be very difficult to recover from. So what I want to talk through today are 5 things in particular that I've seen as patterns over the years, and some new trends that have recently emerged with the new tools that are available to all of us today. So I'll talk through each one of these things in a little more detail, and give you a bit of the lay of the land for all of these items. So the first one, we of course, I'm sure everyone tired of hearing about AI? I know, quite frankly, sometimes I am, because it's the buzzword that we all like, but it is very important. So yes, we will talk about AI. It is a tool that has absolutely changed how we work and will continue to change how we work. And something that we'll talk more about is the speed in which things are created and change has changed the game in a big way with how we handle cyber threats and security overall. We'll talk about the prevalency of SMBs being targets of cyber attacks. Resilience as a whole is something that we need to aim for. So yes, prevention is something we have to have our eyes on and do everything we can to prevent a breach from happening. But ultimately, resilience is what we all want, right? We want our business to continue. We want our business to be able to bounce back if something were to happen. IT needs to be strategic in order for us to have that resilience in our organizations. And we'll talk more about cybersecurity really being a requirement in our business at this point, because the threat landscape is more complex, and because the risk of downtime is so potentially costly at this point. And as Callie mentioned at the top of the presentation, if you have questions, please chat those in. And at the end, I can field any that might come up. So don't feel like you have to hold those back, and you can enter them in, and we'll circle back to them at the end. So the first item here that I want to go over is how AI is changing the game, not only from a personalization, customization standpoint, but from a speed standpoint. So what used to take a bad actor, weeks to put together can now happen in minutes. So the scale at which these types of attacks can happen are much faster because of the automation that's available. And this is the automation that's available to all of us, right? And whenever we have a new tool, a new sophisticated method, we have some people obviously who use it for productive means, and we have others that use it for, in this case, criminality. So that's the unfortunate, other side of the coin. So essentially, this basically posture of being reactive, of looking at fixing what's broken really doesn't work here, because at the speed in which these different attacks are changing and being rolled out, you really need to have that proactive stance. So you need to have 24/7 monitoring. We need to have a response capability put in place. So when something like this does hit, right, when someone, for example, clicks on that phishing link, you have a system already in place that immediately finds that this has happened and shuts it down, throws an alert to the people who are actually working with you, and then they start to look into it, right? That is the ideal way that this helps to protect you. And, I think when we're noticing the different trends here, the types of attacks that are happening are getting so much more sophisticated that it's often very easy for humans to be fooled, right? And, one of the biggest attack vectors is email. We all probably have gone, I hope that we've all gone through, phishing simulations and had those trainings on what to look for with potential, malicious emails. And by the way, we have another presentation a few sessions ago that went all through phishing and what to look for. That I'm sure we can share as a follow-up to this. But essentially, what an attacker does is uses all the tools that we all have available, these AI tools, and can very quickly assemble from publicly available information about your company, your teammates, maybe even some customer information, and can put together a very convincing email that if you're moving just a little bit too fast, it can trip you up and you can click on a malicious link. So, this is happening at scale. It's not just one email at a time. Attackers can literally target hundreds of people simultaneously. So, this is what we're all contending with. So I'll use an example here of a situation that we became aware of. So we had, we'll call it Company A. All of their systems were working properly, no issue technically. Their vendor, we'll call Company B, was compromised. So they were compromised through one of their employees clicking on a phishing link. And by clicking on that link, they gained access to an email inbox in their finance department. So what that bad actor did was started seeing all the emails that were coming in, started looking at invoices that were coming in, and basically timed their their approach to end of month invoicing. And what they did was basically say, okay, I've got from Company A, I know what they owe us, invoice number, all of that detailed information. So on a Friday afternoon, they called the finance department and said, oh, hi, I'm, pretended that they were the legit vendor. We updated our ACH information, our bank account information. So I need you to send the payment to this other account. And we've noticed that, it's the due date has passed. We really need payment quickly. So everything seemed legit, right? They had invoice numbers, correct amounts. They knew what the payment was for, and they sent the payment. Oftentimes, these types of things happen on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday, right? This is part of the social engineering aspect of these attacks, that people might be rushing. They waited for the situation where there was urgency because it was already past due, and it gave them a few days before maybe anybody would notice something was wrong. Well, Tuesday rolls around, and the actual people who were supposed to receive payment said, well, no, we never got it. It never came through. And that same day, when they uncovered what had happened, enough time had gone by so that payment could no longer be reversed. And that, again, that's attackers know this, right? They can get 72 hours. It's very hard to do anything about that. So, this is an example of Company A had basically, sent a significant amount of money to a threat actor. There was nothing technically that breached their environment. It was purely social engineering, right? Now, the vendor did have a breach, right? They had their email infiltrated, and they were able to obviously pull this off. So, when I mentioned earlier about, making sure that we protect our organizations and we're resilient, that's why technology, yes, is important. It's a critical part of this picture. But if you don't also have training for your team members and policies in place, procedures in place that would help guard against this, you won't have, the complete picture addressed. So that's why, for example, finance teams, I mean, that is, one of your most critical areas to have this type of training. Because, for example, if anybody wants to change bank account information, call, right? Do the old-fashioned phone call to talk to the person call the number that you already have in your records, obviously not the number that's in this new email with the request, and ask, hey, did you actually change your bank account information? I received this request, and they'll be able to tell you. Now, really sophisticated actors can do things to impersonate voices and all that. This is all possible these days. However, that is usually all that you need. If you can get more sophisticated, right? You can have basically tools that give you a passcode. You can have an analog passcode, right? That you don't push through a tool. There are different things to even button that up even tighter. And when you go through your resiliency planning, you can go through all that depending on your risk profile. But that's an example that I like to give because it's such a good illustration of, tech versus social engineering, human error, right? How it interplays together. So what do we do when we're thinking about keeping everything in ship shape, right? How do we protect ourselves and also start to position ourselves so we can be resilient, right? Because if anyone says to you, right, do all of these things and you're not going to ever have a breach, you're not ever going to be victim of a cyber attack that actually works, right? No one can actually guarantee that. I wish that were different, but that's not the world we live in. There's too much complexity. Things are moving too fast. And again, even if you're doing everything right, it only takes one person to click on, the wrong link to open you up to some risk. Now, if you have this defense in depth approach, even if something does happen, and it's really when something does happen, you can contain it very quickly and not even experience any downtime. That's the ultimate goal, right? We notice it quickly, we isolate it, we look at it a little more closely to see if anything else has to be done, and on we go, right? But we have this defense in depth philosophy or principle because you need multiple layers when it comes to security. So not only one method will protect you, these all come at the problem from different angles. And also if one line of defense fails, you've got the next one and the next one. So, again, somebody just clicking on a phishing link is not going to take down your organization. But if they click on the phishing link, you don't have monitoring in place to find it. Nobody notices something different or, anomalous is going on that they can't look into it anymore. Maybe you don't have a firewall configured correctly, right? These things start to stack up. And that's when some damage and some serious, downtime can occur. So the real protection comes from all these different layers. So I'll just talk through each one quickly. Having 7 of these items here, it could literally be 7 different webinars. So I'm just gonna touch on them, pretty quickly. So team training, I think that was clear from the example I gave with the finance team. The second one here is around identity access and control. So this is essentially having control over who can access your various systems and how. So that would be things like, conditional access, multi-factor authentication, We operate off of a principle of least privilege. So that means in your team, you could, trust your team to the utmost. It's not about not trusting people. It's about only giving people access to what they absolutely need to do their jobs. If you give them access to more, it's just opening you up to risk that you don't need. So the second point, or the third point here around endpoint email protection. So this is that scenario where, we want to have that real-time threat detection. So we're intercepting it. We're filtering our emails. We're monitoring all of our devices. So if an attack starts with a click on the wrong thing, this is the layer that's essentially designed to stop that. When we look at networking and infrastructure monitoring, so that is 24/7 visibility into all of your systems, your devices, your network, because ultimately you can't respond to something that you can't see. So it's essentially your early warning system. Detection response, this one pretty much speaks for itself. So this is, again, acting in real time. This is, your security team, your networking team. And this really matters because the speed in which you respond is very important. So we want to have real-time alerts, escalations that are going, to the right people. And we also want to have coordination across our various systems that are monitoring all of this. And it's about detection, but it's also about stopping it very quickly. So this next point, we're starting to get into really something that is this key to resilience. So our backup and recovery. So this is, for example, you need to restore maybe a whole server, you need to restore a file. If all of these layers are basically infiltrated, right? Let's say a bad actor accesses your system in a situation like ransomware, right? They might say, okay, all of your files are encrypted, pay us $500,000, $1 million, you choose. They often ask for exorbitant amounts. We will give you the key to unlock it. That's when this is obviously super critical, because you want to have a backup and recovery system that actually can recover what you need it to recover, right? So this is secure automated backups. You need to be able to restore your most critical information quickly. And, this is when, as business leaders, we need to really plan. It's not, will something happen? If something will happen, plan that eventually it will, and how quickly can you recover, right? And then this final one, governance compliance. So again, I'll go back to that example with finance. Well, what were the policies for the governance around protecting information, around having the structure that we need, not just the tools, but the structure to operate in a way that keeps everything secure? So key things here, making sure you have, a great overall tech strategy, you have documentation, standardization, because if you have, essentially security without a strategy, it's not going to really hit the mark and deliver what you need as an organization for it to help you operate most effectively and essentially be much more effective. You'll still be in that reactive camp. So as we're thinking about all these big topics, and, we work at Enterprise primarily with small, medium-sized businesses because of this very, very issue. Over the past 5 years, we've seen an increased prevalence of small, medium-sized businesses being targeted. Years ago, when I would give a presentation about this topic, the percentage of cyber attacks to small, medium-sized businesses used to be 43%, and now it's 60%. So, back to the unfortunate side of AI, right? That it's being used for much more scaled and automated attacks. That is continuing to be the trend, and it's causing more and more small, medium-sized businesses to be targeted. And that's the how. It's how they're doing it, right? They're getting to many, many more organizations with very sophisticated methods. And they're doing so because, unfortunately, many times small, medium-sized businesses have less mature security controls, right? All those layers that we just went through, they have fewer of them, or maybe they're not set up quite right. And that's what attackers are banking on, that they're going to keep trying from all sorts of different angles to find that weak point. That weak point might be through email. That weak point might be through a misconfigured firewall. That weak point might be, the new person in the finance department or the HR team, right? Or they might find credentials for an employee that no longer works there, right? These are all things that are prime for them. So, this is something that we can't think that we're safe because we're small. Our data is important to us as business owners, and bad actors know that, and they know that you would probably consider paying them to give that data back if you couldn't restore it yourself. And, essentially that is, unfortunately, an absolutely massive moneymaker. So people are paying ransoms all the time. It's another webinar. I keep realizing I'm plugging other webinars, but the team did a wonderful panel with the University of New England about ransomware. So if anyone wants to dig into that, it was really informative. They actually had a business owner on the stage that talked about his experience that he went through. So, I think essentially we have to just embrace that security can't be accidental anymore, right? It has to be intentional. It has to be designed and layered. And on top of that, actively managed. And when we're looking at, what's at stake here, I know this is another 60% stat, but if an organization is victim to a cyber attack, and this is often a ransomware scenario because of the price tag associated with it, but unfortunately 60% of small, medium-sized businesses actually close within 6 months of an event like this. And that happens for a multitude of reasons. So if you think about, let's say, for example, you did have critical systems locked up, right? You couldn't access your email for an extended period of time. You couldn't access your payment system, right? You couldn't access your key files to operate your business. That creates downtime and lost revenue over time, and just causes you not to be able to operate. When enough time goes by, and there are various reasons, you of course have to let your customers know, particularly if any information was taken, right? We have to inform those who are affected. They're also going to know just if you aren't able to do your work for them, right? Or you're not able to contact them. This erodes customer trust, and there may be churn because of that. And then there's the cost of rebuilding. So let's say, okay, everything's been isolated. It's safe to work with our files again, or whatever that situation might be. It can be very costly to maybe recreate lost data, right? Make up for that lost time. So, this is something that can really have a huge impact. And, as we talked about kind of at the beginning of this conversation, these events aren't a blip, right? It's not just a little bit of downtime, disruption, and annoyance. This is something that can cause enough disruption to unfortunately really affect the longevity of an organization. So it's important for us to reframe the risk here of, it's not how do we prevent everything, it's how do we make sure that our business survives and continues to operate when something happens, right? And again, we don't want to think of that inevitability, but that's how you should be thinking about it and planning to make sure that you are prepared. So when it comes to this topic of, thinking about when, not if, the goal is resilience. So yes, we want to think about preventing. We want to do everything we can to prevent. We also need to think about, how can you recover if something happens? So this is where your technology conversations, your IT conversations really need to be at that strategic level. And, we never want to have a session, as a leadership team to say, well, let's go down the, worst case scenario rabbit hole, right? That's never a conversation we want to have, but I encourage you to have it. If you don't have a business continuity plan, resiliency plan more broadly, absolutely sit down as a leadership team and talk about what ifs, right? And it should be related to your technology, but other areas of your business as well, right? So this isn't just what if email goes down, or what if we can't access certain files? Also ask yourself, okay, we rely primarily on this certain vendor in our supply chain. Do we have a backup? What if something happens with them? Is our business going to grind to a halt if we can't work with this one vendor, right? Think of all the different areas of risk and have backup plans, right? So obviously we're talking about IT, we're talking about backups, meaning files, right? But think about other areas of backups as well. So this should coincide with your broader business continuity plan. And, I think as we're looking at all of these different trends, it's something that becomes very clear that, this is a conversation that has to happen strategically. It has to think of the overall longevity of the organization and the health of the organization. So, more pointedly, when we think of business resilience, it's that, capacity to adapt, recover, and even to thrive through disruption. And that's what's going to, make a business that's strong, really incredibly durable. So, we have to think about how this is integrated across the whole organization. And something that is also really key here to think about is make sure that you look at it regularly to see what maybe has changed in your threat landscape, or what has changed in your operation that you need to plan that backup scenario for. And also have the conversations with your team around steps that you're taking and bring them along for the journey, right? Because as we navigate these rapidly changing environments, threats, opportunities, we need to also enforce that culture of change and learning with our teams as well, so they embrace whatever kind of updates and policies and procedures that you need to put in place. So I know that you're probably hearing it loud and clear at this point, but yes, you need to have these conversations with your leadership team. That means IT has to take a seat at the strategy table, so to speak, and I'll use the cliche of, I think in the past, people have always thought of IT, being in the basement, the server room pictures and all of that. And IT now needs to be in the boardroom. And again, I know that's cliche, but it absolutely is the truth. And it's okay that you don't have a CIO, a CTO. That is absolutely fine. You can find, wonderful tech advisors who can help to assist here. So, we need to make sure that, again, we're focusing on how are we helping our business operate more efficiently to meet our business goals with using technology in the best way, not just thinking of it as, well, how do I fix something that's broken? So the best ways for us to do this is think about your goals overall as a business and have an IT roadmap that supports that growth. And this will come in a lot of different forms and inform a lot of different part of the business. But this will enable you in terms of your budgeting to have something in place, right, at the beginning of the year, instead of being reactive to requests from the team, issues that come up. So from a financial perspective, it will enable you to plan in a much more meaningful way. It also will help you to start to standardize your tools and vendors. Something we notice often, especially with fast-growing organizations, this kind of tech sprawl starts to happen. If you don't have a clear IT approach, IT roadmap, you'll have teams that, empowered with the company credit card, will just go out and purchase a different tool that their team needs. They start using it, and before long, for example, you'd have 3 different project management applications across 3 different teams. And at first it's not something that even a CFO would notice, right? I mean, if you, for example, were using Asana, a project management tool for a few people, that's not going to be a big flag, right, on your expense report. Over time, that grows, right, and builds. And then all of a sudden you have different tools, no standard around how you're managing access to those tools. If an employee's offboarded, they exit the company, did we rescind that access? Chat tools are another big one, Slack, Teams, so having standardized tools and vendors and credentialing policies is really critical. And that feeds into this onboarding and offboarding point here as well. How do employees come onto the team, get access to the tools they need? Again, that principle of least privilege. How do they only have access to what they need? When they leave, that access is removed. So all of this aligns your security investments with the risk profile that you have, and it creates that defensive posture, as well as positions you to be most efficient, most competitive, and be able to use all these tools to really help you with what you're building. So the final point here around cybersecurity as a business requirement, I think it's clear at this point, of course, the risk that not having this in place could mean for your business. But this is a requirement externally as well. So meaning from partners, customers, cybersecurity is a requirement. So it's no longer something that is, a nice to have, or it is something that makes you stand out. It's pretty much table stakes at this point. So we're seeing more and more that insurance companies are requiring more and more stringent security practices to get cyber coverage. We're often helping customers to answer those forms that have become much more detailed and complex. We often are talking with companies that approach us to say, hey, I can't get coverage and I need to remediate X, Y, and Z. How do I do it, right? Businesses are also hearing these requests from their customers, right, or their prospective customers. We want to work with you, but can you show us that you have these security practices in place? And again, I'll go back to that example that I used, right? Company A had no cyber attack, no issue. Company B, their vendor did, and that's when they were affected, right? And then overall with compliance, different industries, of course, have different regulatory considerations. You know, if you're a financial services firm or you're a healthcare company, you're going to have different needs than a Department of Defense contractor, right? So, and everything in between. So having the right compliance partner for that monitoring to help keep you, you know, basically up to speed on what's needed and then to actually deliver it, that's really critical. So we're having these external pressures and requests for cybersecurity, and that all should be, and I'll say should be, because obviously nothing's 100%, but that all should be addressed if you are doing a good job with asking the questions internally about how resilient are we? Do we have our defense in depth buttoned up every step of the way? When you get these external requests, that you should be in a great place. So ultimately, to kind of start wrapping this up, you know, the best way to think about this is, you know, yes, we want to support. Usually businesses over-index on the support. That's the reactive piece of this, that if it's broken, let's fix it. But we also need to think about protection. What is our security posture? How do we mitigate risk? And we have to plan for the future, right? Really think about your technology strategy in context of your broader business plan, in context of the growth plans that you have for the next year for your business. And it's okay and honestly expected too, if you're not a tech business yourself, that maybe you don't know how technology could help your business get to the next level or help solve some critical challenges. But first, just ask the question, wouldn't it be nice if we could do XYZ faster? Or wouldn't it be nice if there was a way that customers could more easily talk to us or submit feedback? Just ask the question. And then you can find, you know, the right advisor to give you some ideas on how you could realize that. So essentially, the key steps in getting all of this started, I know it's a lot to think about. I mean, this is not a simple endeavor here, but essentially the best thing to do is just start looking at where you could have vulnerabilities today. What are your risks? You know, when you think about all those areas, we look at defense in depth. Well, where do you stand with all those things? Ask yourself, if something were to happen, if one of my critical systems files, and I'll say something in your supply chain, right? Anything operationally, how would you recover? How fast could you recover? What would the price tag look like for downtime for each one of those things, right? Because that's going to also help to inform you what makes sense to invest to ensure it doesn't happen. That will help you to define your roadmap. It will help you define your budget. It will help you to define your approach. And that all coalesces around helping IT to align with business goals. You know, this can't sit on an island. It has to be 100%, you know, working with your team, your executive leadership team, and ultimately it's a tool to help you grow and help you protect what you've built. So with that, we have a few minutes for questions. So I'd love to see what you all have. So I'll look at the chat here and see if anything's coming in. Okay, so we have a question here. Kelly, do you want me to just go off this question that I see in the chat?
Sure. We'll start with that one.
Okay, great. So, is there a magic size when a company should outsource to an IT provider or bring all IT internally? So there's not a magic size. Something that has been meaningful for me and my team as professionals in this space is to design a solution that accommodates very small companies, because that has been a big gap, that it's been difficult for very small businesses, 20 employees or less, to have holistic IT support, from the day-to-day management up to strategic leadership. So in an ideal scenario, you have those partners from day one, because especially in the early stages of a company, you're growing and changing pretty rapidly. The best way to think about this is like any business. You need a great accounting firm, right? You need the experts. You need a great law firm. You need a great tech partner. Those are all support people and experts in their space that will help ensure that your business is where it needs to be. You have to get to be a very large organization before the cost justifies having an internal IT team. Because think about how much it takes for resources to staff a 24/7 service desk. And you need multiple people because people get sick, people take vacations, and there are many specializations in IT. So, you have your service desk folks, you have networking, you have different areas of security, you have, strategic leadership. These are all specialized roles. And then you have folks who are more specialized in, Microsoft environments. I mean, the list goes on. So having a partner is often much more cost effective, and then you get that high level of expertise.
Wonderful. We've got a couple others.
All right, so let's see. What advice would you give to someone who wants to start their own company? Cool. This is an awesome question. So I really enjoy just entrepreneurship as a whole. So this one is a great thing to think about. So first off, if you want to start your own company, just from a philosophical standpoint, just get started, right? Because you're ready now. I think a lot of people wait because they're like, oh, I'm not ready. You just got to do it. None of us are ever ready. So jump in there, first of all. But I think when you want to start a company, think about who you want to start it with. Be very thoughtful about that and how your skills complement each other. Make sure that there's a lot of trust there, because your business idea and how you do it will change many times. But if you have a great team around you, you'll figure it out. And then build your support network, right? Get that, I'll call it a constellation, right, of either advisors, those strategic partners, right? The accounting firm, the law firm, the tech people. Get them in place early, because with little investment, they will really help you launch ahead and avoid some mistakes that could be costly.
Okay. Well, that's sort of related to a question we have. What would be your short checklist for a solopreneur to make sure they're covered in their first year?
So for a solopreneur, covered from a security perspective in their first year, so I would reach out and have a conversation. If there's literally someone you are in this situation, I'm happy to have a quick call with you. It depends on what your business is, because depending on the type of service or product that you're building, there'll be different considerations. But ultimately, I mean, invest in actually having a protected domain. Don't, get out of the land of just using Gmail. Make sure you have basic security practices like multi-factor authentication set up. Start thinking about those best practices and follow them from day one. And then it's a matter of, just if you bounce some ideas off of someone who is in the space, they can, give you a quick hit list. But yeah, it's kind of hard without knowing the business. Exactly. But yeah, I'm happy to connect.
Okay, great. Well, and
Oh,
I
a
guess
collective of 30 plus solopreneurs. Oh, that's cool. We'll write a blog about that.
okay.
That's a great one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that will be our next blog, a collective of 30 plus solopreneurs. What are the best things to think about? I like
Okay.
that. I like that challenge. Yeah, we'll try to get some tips that work across different business types.
Very cool. We'll be happy to share that out afterwards. And just as a reminder, there was a lot shared today, so we will be sending out a link to the recording and a version of this presentation for folks to access afterwards. Great. It looks like someone's going to take you up on your blog offer. That's awesome.
Good.
Any closing thoughts, Melinda?
Oh no, I appreciate everyone's time, and I'm happy for anyone to reach out. I mean, this is our general email. Those emails always find me too. I'm happy to talk with anybody who has questions, and also how Uprise, as a whole, and our team can help support you. We're really excited to work with small, medium-sized businesses and help technology work for you. So
Like the chamber, we appreciate you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Melinda. We really appreciate this great session today. It was filled with some awesome actionable items to know what it takes to integrate into our businesses, some safe practices, and great ways to be prepared for what may happen. So thank you again to Uprise Partners for their support of this series. I'd like to give a shout out to my colleague Riley Legere for helping to produce yet another successful event. And last but not least, a big thank you to each of you for attending today. And as I said, if you're interested in learning more and continuing the conversation with Melinda or Uprise Partners, be sure to check your email for a follow-up message with a link to the recording and a copy of the slides. And just another shout out to Uprise for their support and contributions to the IT Basics for Business series. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you all back on June 16th for our final session of IT Basics for Business, and we'll see you then.